Hey, Falcons and NFL fans. Welcome to another episode of NFL's Jocks and Pigskins with Tom Pollin. Zozo joining us at the top of the show as well.
Oh, this is actually Clo.
Oh, Clo. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you said Zozo, and because I guess
No.
sometimes
You just jumped into my lap all of a sudden before we started the show.
I don't think we've ever seen Clo before, have we?
Yeah, we've seen her a couple
Yeah?
of times.
Okay. Okay. Chris Smitherman's also with us today, producing behind the scenes, and I'm Dave Holcomb. We're going to do something a little bit different today. We're not going to, I'm sure we'll talk about the Falcons matchup a little bit, of course, but we're going to spend a lot of today's show talking about NFL head coaches that are on the hot seat, or at least could be on the hot seat. Arthur Smith is the guy we'll probably spend the bulk of the show on, and he's definitely on the hot seat. A couple other coaches, maybe speculation, at least in the media, they're on the hot seat. Whether or not the owner considers them coaching for their job to end the year is unknown, but we're going to have a long discussion about a couple of head coaches, starting with Arthur Smith. So should be really fun. And of course, we'll have Tom's picks against the spread and some prize picks for you a little bit later. Today's show brought to you by Prize Picks. If you haven't gotten started, Christmas weekend is a great time to start using Prize Picks. Download the app, use our promo code ASU when you do. That gets you a 100% match on your first deposit up to $100. So some free money to start. And, if you're anything, well, actually, I was pretty good this year, Tom. I got all my Christmas gift shopping done pretty early. But if you're doing a last minute shopping, maybe you place some entries today, get some extra spending money for Christmas.
You never know. Yeah, plenty of opportunities. You got games today, this afternoon, and evening, and you got plenty of full slate tomorrow. So, yeah, the NFL is really serving it up right now for December, for Christmas, and a lot of chances out there. So, yeah, we'll give you a little guidance. I hit 3 of 3 on my last week's prize picks, so we'll give you something to look at. Yeah,
we're hoping you can give us another 3 for 3 this week.
Yes.
No pressure.
No, of course not.
Yeah. So what a terrible loss for Arthur Smith and the Falcons last week. And it's going to lead to our conversation today of Arthur Smith being on the hot seat. And I think in a lot of people's minds, Arthur Smith is a dead man walking. I think for a lot of Falcons fans, they want to see him fired right now, to be honest.
Yeah.
After the 9-7 loss to the Carolina Panthers, they wanted to leave him in Charlotte. But the Falcons still have a chance to make the playoffs. They're 6-8. A couple winnable games still on the schedule. Tough one against the Colts coming up. But, how do you kind of view the status of the team right now coming off that terrible loss and take us into our conversation about Arthur Smith?
Well, I'm telling you, you got Taylor Heineke starting next week. And we've already seen what Heineke can do. There's no unknown factor here. We know what Heineke is. We know what he is as a quarterback. I think the Falcons are in trouble. I think this is not – it's going to be rough because Indianapolis is playing well. The Bears are playing great on defense.
Yeah.
The Bears struggle on offense, kind of like the Falcons have, but their defense has really come along ever since Montez Sweat came in the defensive end.
Right.
So, but the only chance for the Falcons right now is winning the division, and they had a chance to slow down a Bucs team that's really picking up the pace. Should have won that game against Tampa, but didn't. And just missed a huge opportunity last week.
Yeah.
And basically, I know you said that, Carolina was, could be a tough game, but the way I look at it, if this Falcons team was going to be a playoff team, they needed a statement win. And Carolina was set to be a statement win, and they weren't. It wasn't even a win.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Falcons fans would have just taken any kind of win,
right?
Let alone a statement win. 7-0 win would have been fine.
Yeah, exactly.
7-6 win would have been fine.
No, I think their defense did everything they could last week. This defense is playing really solid, even with Anyamata and Grady Jarrett out. They're playing tough. They've been, they swarm to the ball. They play a kind of defense that I enjoy watching. So, but yeah, last Sunday afternoon was miserable for me because of the way the Bears lost and the way the Falcons lost. Right. Oh God, just sick all week. All Sunday night. So.
Well, I want to ask one question about what you said. You said that their only hope is for the division. And I mean, a couple of weeks ago, I would have agreed with you. I'm not necessarily disagreeing, but I'm a little surprised you make that claim because they're only one game back in both the division and the wild card. So is it just because there's too many teams to pass? You think that's
too many teams to pass? Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
That's it exactly, Dave. The more teams you have to pass, the tougher it gets, the more you have to look at luck. And things going your way. And, I could see the Seahawks losing. The Seahawks have struggled now. The Saints have been the Saints, but
they have to pass the Saints to win the NFC South too.
Yes,
so that's right. Why it's an uphill battle either way to get a wild card spot or the division at this point because Tampa Bay is playing well. They're 7-7, game back of them. You don't have the tiebreaker with Tampa Bay right now. You got to pass the Saints as well. If you want to make the wild card, you got to pass the Saints, the Seahawks, as you mentioned, and the Vikings. Vikings hold the last spot right now. Vikings do have 2 games against the Lions in the last 3 weeks. That could help the Falcons if the Lions sweep Minnesota.
But then you got to look at the Seahawks who are playing the Titans, Pittsburgh Steelers, Arizona Cardinals. Not 3 games that really strike fear into your heart.
Yeah.
The Vikings, they might be catchable because they got to play the Lions twice. They have to play the Packers in between that. And, without Kirk Cousins, and really Josh Dobbs is falling back to earth really quick for the Vikings after a quick start. We kind of got what we expected out of Dobbs. The same thing we saw in Arizona. Lee caught up to him very quickly. So
he's not even playing anymore.
No. But the Rams are playing well, so you're not going to catch the Rams. The Packers have been up and down, but you got the your same record as the Packers, so that's a good shot. But Seahawks and Saints are going to be tough to pass. It's just, and the Falcons have to play a good Colts team, a Colts team that's actually played very well with Gardner Minshew.
Yeah, the Colts are peaking at the right time, at least to make the playoffs. I'm not saying like going on a Super Bowl run, but they're playing well enough. They're a playoff team right now.
Yeah, and Jonathan Taylor is going to be back with the Colts this week.
Yeah.
So his thumb injury is healed. So the Falcons are going to have a hell of a time stopping that running game. And Minshew does – he kind of does what a veteran quarterback does well. Doesn't make mistakes, plays within himself, knows who he is, and makes things happen for that offense. So, they're in good shape with that. And that's – I don't want to get ahead of myself, but that's kind of what the Falcons have to find for next season. A Minshew type who knows what he is and doesn't make a lot of mistakes. There's a lot more things with Atlanta that we got to talk about. But, and as I say, you got the Bears. The Bears are not going to be an easy out. With Montez Sweat, as their defensive, pass rusher, the Bears have been getting a lot of turnovers lately. Let's see if I can find that real quick as far as their turnover numbers. But let's see, come on. I'm going to do that. Okay, the Bears have 14 turnovers in their last 4 games. They've created 14 turnovers, let's put it that way.
14 takeaways.
14 takeaways in their last 4 games. Ever since Montez Sweat hit the lineup, the Bears have been, playing just monster defense. And that's one of the things the Falcons do is they give up the ball. They don't not secure enough with the football.
Right.
So, it's and then you have to beat the Saints at the end. So it's not an easy road for the Falcons anymore. You had your road.
Yeah, you had your easy games against Carolina. You dropped one against Arizona. I mean, Minnesota, 500 team, but wouldn't have been if you beat them at home. Hold on to that game.
Yeah.
So yeah, there were lots of missed opportunities, and the schedule's not super difficult, but it's much harder than it's been to end the season. Yeah.
Yeah, it's, as I say, it's too bad because, you lose to Minnesota. There's your tiebreaker there. You're head to head. So, and they're ahead of you. You got to do something. If they fall back even a little bit, they're still in better shape than Falcons are. So, losing that game last week was just a killer for Atlanta. And I know it's been covered all week, but I don't know where the hell Ritter was throwing that ball, that fourth quarter interception. I don't know what he was trying to, that ball should have either been 5 rows up, in the end zone or, being caught by one of the photographers out of bounds.
I believe Ritter called it the worst play he's ever made in his life. So something like that. I'm paraphrasing. And it looked like it. It was terrible, and maybe it summarizes the entire game and perhaps the whole season for the Falcons at this point, anyway. The Falcoholic ran a poll this week, Tom, that 9% of Falcons fans polled in this poll answered that they have confidence in the team going forward. 9%. And that kind of leads to my next question about, Arthur Smith, stay or go. And maybe one of the points, the big point I want to make today and in this conversation, I don't think there's enough nuance with these kind of conversations about head coaches. A lot of it is, does he deserve it? What's his win-loss record? Even if it is a little bit more nuanced, it's like, has the team improved? And I know this requires a little bit of a crystal ball that we obviously don't possess, but there's 2 big things I think that you need to look at if you're firing a head coach. If you've already established that he's a good head coach or a good play caller or whatever, which I think at least some of the guys that we're going to talk about today are. Like Mike Tomlin, we'll talk about a little bit. He's a good head coach. So that's not the question of whether or not he should stay. Of course, he's a good head coach. I think Arthur Smith is a good coach on some level. But the question I have about him is, and all these coaches that are on the hot seat, do they still have their team, the respect of the locker room? Do players still play hard for him? And will they play hard for him the rest of the season and going forward? And the problems that the teams have, can they fix those head coaches? Can they fix them?
Right.
Can Arthur Smith fix the problems on the Falcons offense? And that poll to me says a vast majority of Falcons fans say no. And I can't disagree with them at this point.
No, you can't.
You look at just the yo-yoing at quarterback between Ritter and Heineke. I saw a really funny tweet from the Falcoholic, I think it was, this morning, that it was one of those cycle things with the arrows, and it had 4 things. It was, we have confidence in Dez. We think he's the best way forward. We need to win now. Start Heineke. No,
right.
We like Dez. Back to Dez. We need to win now. Back to Heineke. And it's just we're on this cycle at quarterback this season. And it started last year when I guess Arthur Smith thought Mariota gave him the best chance to win as they were pushing for the playoffs in the middle of the season. Then when it was, obvious they weren't going to make the playoffs, it was Dez. And we've been on that cycle since of Dez is our future, but we need to win now. And we're yo-yoing at quarterback. And I think he's messed that up. Arthur Smith has, and the inability to get more out of these top picks. We talk about it almost every week, but Jonnu Smith led them in receiving again last week. And he's the one that had the big play. He did have a great big play in the game, but why isn't Kyle Pitts doing that? Why isn't Drake London doing that? Why is B.J. Robinson fumbling in the red zone in a key, in a key second half moment of that game?
Right.
Obviously, Robinson's got to take accountability for that too. But
sure. But one thing, it's a rainy afternoon, and it's a slippery football. I get it. That's only Robinson's third fumble all year. So it's not like he's made a habit of this. Not like he turns the ball over quite a bit.
Yeah.
It's going to happen to everybody. Everybody in the league, loses the handle on the ball occasionally. I'm not really blaming Robinson. I think the defense did a great job bailing him out, holding Carolina to a field goal off of that. But, my problem is Robinson doesn't get the ball enough.
Right. Yeah.
You drafted these playmakers. 3 straight years, you have drafted guys on offense that you have said are going to be your playmakers, are going to be the guys, and top 10 picks, they better be your playmakers. They better be Pro Bowl players.
Yeah.
All right. They should be among the best in the league. And why he's not using Robinson as much. All right, Tyler Algier should not have near as many carries as Bijan Robinson. And he doesn't have as many, but it's close. You should not be starting drives with Tyler Algier. You got to be starting – every drive should start with Bijan Robinson. Use Tyler Algier for short yardage, for battering ram type situations.
Yeah.
And that's what he is. That's all he is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Going into the season, Algier is not the guy you want breaking through to the second level and then having to turn on the jets because he doesn't have jets. So,
yeah. And to your point, Algier had 14 carries last week. Robinson had 7. And I guess in Arthur Smith's defense, Robinson only had 11 yards on those 7 carries. He didn't play well. Algier had 45 yards on his 14 carries, but you could also argue, sometimes it takes running backs a little bit of time to get rolling.
Yes, exactly.
You keep feeding your best running backs, and
you got to feed him.
He did. He has not done that with Robinson enough. Consistently feeding him, right, and making sure he gets his touches,
and that's a huge problem. And that's right on Arthur Smith. He should know better. He had Derrick Henry in Tennessee. Henry doesn't gain or doesn't run through his blockers for 8 to 10 yards every attempt or break, runs every game. But he's a battering ram. By the time the game's over, he's got over 100 yards and he's completely worn out of defense.
Yeah, right.
And Robinson came into this league with the reputation of being a 3-down back. A guy who you could put on the field and leave on the field, even in passing situations and short yardage situations, that Robinson was going to be the guy who could come through for you, that he could handle anything you put him on the field for. And they're not giving him that opportunity. And that's directly on Smith. Because again, you drafted him to be this.
Yeah. Yes, there's an obvious disconnect between the general manager building the team and the head coach.
Absolutely.
And we brought up, a couple of our listeners brought up Rich McKay last week. And I saw Rich McKay get mentioned by Mike Florio this week. When Florio was arguing whether or not the Falcons should clean house, he included McKay in his list of, he said it would very unlikely, it's very unlikely to happen, but if he thinks that if Arthur Blank cleans house, it should include Rich McKay. And I thought that was interesting after our conversation last week. And I think Smith is the one on the hot seat, not Terry Fontenot. But if Terry Fontenot and Rich McKay, assuming he's making these decisions as well, if they're drafting these players, they have to get a head coach that's going to use them.
Yes, exactly. Right. I looked it up earlier. Drake London is 36th in the league in targets. 36th.
Yeah.
For an 8th overall pick.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that tells you he's not even, I mean, there's 32 teams. He should be at least in the top 32.
Right.
He probably should be number one on his own team.
Pitts is 53rd in targets.
Do you know what that is among tight ends?
No, actually, I didn't look at that among tight ends.
Yeah, I was just curious. But both players are not. And part of that is Ritter. Part of that is Ritter. I mean, he only had 20 attempts last week. So there's not a ton of targets to go around.
Right.
When he targeted 9 receivers on 20 targets, on 20 attempts last week. So there's not a lot of ball to go around there. And it was a rainy day, so you're not going to throw a lot anyway, regardless of who your quarterback is. But it's on Arthur Smith to develop Ritter. It's on him. It's on him to put Ritter in a position to succeed with plays and scheme and a game plan that fits him. And far too often, Arthur Smith has just fallen short in that this season. And I go back to my point about, should these coaches be fired or retained? Do you have the confidence that Arthur Smith that the Falcons can draft a quarterback and it would be any different with a more highly touted prospect than Ritter? At this point, I don't know how you can confidently say yes, that it's going to be a lot different.
I can't do that. That's the problem. And that's what you run into. The same thing we run into in a few places, here in Chicago, the same place we run into. Fans are asking, do you trust Matt Eberflus and offensive coordinator Luke Getsy if the Bears decide to move on from Fields and draft another quarterback and start all over again?
Right.
Do you trust them to develop them? And most Bears fans will tell you no way. Not going to happen. I don't trust Arthur Smith. Even though Arthur Smith came into the Falcons as a head coach who had done very well as an offensive coordinator in Tennessee, I don't have any faith in Arthur Smith making good use or developing a new quarterback or being able to work with an established quarterback if they bring one in, a young guy or an established quarterback.
Maybe Justin Fields.
Maybe Kyler Murray. I was also thinking about Kyler Murray the other day.
Yeah.
I think Kyler Murray is actually going to be available. So, but do I have faith in Arthur Smith's ability to use one of these guys, either continue with Ritter, bring in Justin Fields? And telling you from Chicago's perspective, you're going to get the same problem with Justin Fields because Justin Fields will have your jaw dropping, 3 or 4 times a game with the things he can do and just amaze you. And then he will have you pulling your hair out the rest of the game because of things he's missing, and that's the problem you have. You're replacing one team's problem. You're replacing your problem with another team's problem.
And I think that's why in the olden days, you wouldn't see so much quarterback movement. Maybe there are other reasons for that as well. There are a lot more trades in today's NFL, which makes it much more exciting. But you wouldn't have these cast-off quarterbacks. You wouldn't want one back 20, 30 years ago, and even before that. But now, I don't know, it's changed where a team, maybe it's a little bit of arrogance of, the Bears haven't been able to figure them out, but we can. And I think you have a very wise, cautionary tale there that it's not always greener on the other side, that you're going to have the same problems with Justin Fields.
Yeah. As he doesn't read defenses well. He's late targeting receivers, late getting rid of the ball, hangs onto the ball too long, doesn't get the ball out of bounds as many times as he should when he's rushed. So, Atlanta fans are going to be going crazy unless Arthur Smith can fix him. And you get to that point, Dave. That is one of the problems with today's NFL. One of the things you see all across today's NFL. We can fix him. All right. We know what's wrong with him. We can fix him. In our system, he's going to be a lot better. They thought Buffalo and then Pittsburgh thought they could fix Mitch Trubisky.
Yeah, that's a good example of, the last Bears franchise quarterback that they were hoping to have. And yeah, the Bills brought him in, just as a backup. And then, the Steelers, at least I don't know if the Steelers considered him a franchise quarterback, but at least a placeholder, a guy that could compete with Pickett, and then this year be one of the best backups in the league. I think that was what they thought going into the season. And boy, that just backfired in their favor.
Backfired on them big time. I could have told them that. But that's always the case is, we can fix him. We know what he's been doing wrong. Well, 31 other teams also know what he's been doing wrong. The team that had him knew what he was doing wrong. They couldn't fix him.
Right. Yeah.
So, but everybody thinks that they are the savior. They're the guy. And I don't see Arthur Smith as the guy who's going to bring in an established quarterback, or maybe over the offseason work with Ritter, or maybe, drafting a quarterback. And they're not in a good position to draft a quarterback. So they're going to have to do their scouting work to find a quarterback worthy of drafting in like the late first, early second round, because they're not going to be in a position to take one of the top names coming out of college this year. So,
well, I mean, we'll see. There's still 3 weeks left in the season, and I'm not saying that I'm predicting this, but the Falcons could lose these last 3 games.
Yes, they could.
They could finish 6 and how many? It'd be 6 and 11. So I'm so screwed up with 17-game season.
I know.
Wanted to say 6 and 10, but no, it's 6 and 11 now. And I mean, their strength of schedule is so weak that whoever else is 6 and 11, they'll be the first team that picks that's 6 and 11. And that could be, I mean, that's probably going to be around where they've been, around 8th. They've picked 8th the last 2 years. Yeah. So, I mean, they might have a top 10 pick, and if this is a deep quarterback class, 3 or 4 guys going to go in the top 10. Maybe, I mean, I don't know. Maybe we'll see. And then they'll be in a position, if they're 8th, they could move up into the top 5.
Well, then you can make a move. That's a possibility, and you don't even have to draft. Give up all of this year's draft capital. You trade draft picks, and you give up maybe a future draft pick for 2025, and you can make a move like that. So it's not out of the realm of possibility. But again,
if they lose these last 3 games, though, I don't see Smith will not be back.
He can't be, because again, I don't have any faith that he's going to do what's needed to be done with a new quarterback, because he's essentially Terry Fontenot has given him the weapons on offense. It's a decent offensive line. It's not a great offensive line. I would rather have seen the Falcons use more picks on that offensive line, but it's a decent offensive line. I think Bergeron stepped in very well this season. But so you got that going for you. You got playmakers. There's guys that you drafted as playmakers. So, you're missing the quarterback, but do you trust Smith to actually bring in a quarterback, allow him to use these playmakers?
Yeah. Yeah. And this is why, like at the beginning of the season, when we talk about, well, if the Falcons don't make the playoffs, Smith is gone. That's such silly talk, because it's all about context. If they're 6 and 8 and they're top 5 in offense right now, Arthur Smith would be coming back, because you're feeling good about Ritter. You're feeling good about all those draft picks we're talking about, and Smith's scheme is working, and you just need to add defensive players, which was what we thought the problem was before the season, right? This offense was going to be great. It has all these young playmakers. As long as Ritter can be at least like a point guard, they're going to do well on offense in Arthur Smith's scheme.
All Ritter has to do is distribute the ball.
Yeah, right. And it was just a question of can we cover well enough? Can we pressure the quarterback well enough to hold the other team down while our offense scores 20 to 25 points a game?
Yeah.
But that's not the 6-8 team the Falcons are. Again, they're they're going to finish around 7-10 like they have the last 2 years, but the offense has gotten worse under an offensive head coach.
Yeah. They do nothing in the red zone. They're 21st in red zone touchdowns. Okay, rely way too much on field goals. But we said this last year. And we said this had to change. And we thought it was going to change when they drafted Bijan Robinson. You got a guy that you can take into the red zone and do some things with. And that's the frustrating part is, even red zone attempts. Where are they in red zone attempts? They're 22nd in red zone attempts, 21st in red zone touchdowns. They're not getting to the red zone as much as they should be under this head coach.
Yeah, right.
With these playmakers.
Yeah.
They're not getting there. And they're not putting points on the board.
Yeah.
One of the worst scoring teams in the league.
Because they're not moving the ball, and when they get into the red zone, are they leading the league in red zone turnovers? I think Ritter has the most red zone interceptions. That's what I read this week.
Yeah, and he was also that's a lot of when his fumbles were taking place were in the red zone too. So I don't have a line on red zone turnovers.
Okay.
That's not on Pro Football Reference. They give you how many times in the red zone and red zone touchdowns, red zone percentage. So, but hey.
Yeah, I read he leads the league in red zone interceptions at least, and you're right. He's had a few red zone fumbles as well.
He had 3 red zone fumbles in that first game against Tampa Bay.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So let's get to some comments. Smart Ride says Arthur Smith's playbook scheme and play calling is the main issue. If he really cares about football, he should go to the college ranks and hone his skills. This level is over his head. Marcel Smith shares that sentiment. Old already been in over his head. And Gary asked a question just overall in the NFL with so many coaches on the hot seat, will owners soon be setting records on guaranteed contracts for their replacements? Ben Johnson thinks so, Gary. Ben Johnson, the
yes.
offensive coordinator for the Lions. There was a report this week from NFL insider Josina Anderson that Ben Johnson is looking for a $15 million contract to be a head coach. I don't know if I 100% believe that's true. That's just astronomical number for NFL head coach. Right. But I guess if you're in high demand as much as Ben Johnson is, and you like your current job with the Lions, being their coordinator, you work for Dan Campbell, and Dan Campbell seems like a pretty fun guy to work with. So maybe he is holding out for top dollar. And yes, I guess if you're going to get him, you're going to have to open the wallet.
Yeah.
And he's probably going to be a candidate for the Falcons. Yeah. At least if Falcons fans will want the team to interview.
Oh, they're going to want him. Yeah.
If Arthur Smith if they depart with him.
Right. Yeah. They're going to want to see the Falcons interview Dan Campbell, but Dan Campbell, Ben Johnson.
Right.
But, you're going to have to pry him away from the Lions. That's the problem. You're going to have to get a pry bar and just, and by pry bar, I mean money. So,
yeah,
you're going to have to pry him away from the Lions.
So our conclusion as of right now is Arthur Smith is gone in Atlanta. You kind of gave us a nice quick summary on Matt Eberflus and saying that Bears fans don't believe in him and Luke Getsy being able to develop the next quarterback that's likely coming in the draft next spring to Chicago. Is that where you want to leave that as well, that Eberflus is going to be gone or should be gone too in Chicago? Like Arthur
Smith? I think so, because it's all about offense here in Chicago too. They're not scoring. Their defense is playing well enough to win. They've actually have a playoff caliber defense now, but they're all over the place on offense, and it's been rough to watch this team on offense. And I do think that from what I've been hearing, from when I hear some of these, Bears insiders interviewed, some of these, beat reporters and guys who have a lot of contacts, the word is that Matt Eberflus is, for the most part, done in Chicago. Unofficially, but they expect that to be the case.
Okay. Yeah.
There's a lot of reporters around the team who believe that it's just a matter of getting through the final 3 games, and that's all. So yeah, I think Eberflus is going to be gone too.
Is that a decision that was reached prior to the Week 15 collapse in Cleveland, or was that the last straw?
Prior to the Week 15 collapse in Cleveland, they have had 3 2-score fourth quarter leads and have lost all 3 games. 3 games where they were up by 2 scores in the fourth quarter and lost. Right. No other NFL team has ever done that.
In history?
In history.
Wow.
That's the first time it's ever happened where you've had 2-score leads and given them up in the fourth quarter. So no, this is not the first time that this has been said. It was kind of a wrap-up of what everybody's been thinking, the way the Cleveland Browns game went. But no, that was not the final straw.
Okay.
It's been kind of going on for the entire season.
Gotcha. Yeah. I want to get to Mike Tomlin here and for a few minutes and get back to our original points of, yes, Mike Tomlin is a great head coach, but is he the guy? Has he lost control of the locker room or not? And is he the guy to fix the team's problems, which, by the way, we've brought up 3 head coaches perhaps on the hot seat, and all of their problems are on offense. 2 of the guys are defensive coaches. But and I think for the first time, Tom, ever, Mike Tomlin might be losing this locker room in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, might be.
And, if our listeners have an Athletic subscription, even if you're not a Steelers fan, I encourage you to go read Mark Cabal's column on Mike Tomlin he released on Thursday. And he brought up a quote that Mike Tomlin had in 2008 when Willie Parker was calling for more carries, more touches, more rushing yards on that team that wasn't great offensively, but had an historic defense, went on to win the Super Bowl. And Mike Tomlin's response publicly to Willie Parker's cry for more touches, more carries, more yards was, I walk by 5 Lombardi trophies every single morning to work, not 5 rushing titles.
I've heard that.
And Mike Tomlin had a chance to have a great soundbite like that on the George Pickens situation. And this was the argument that Mark Cabal made in his column, that, Tomlin had a great chance to kind of publicly call out George Pickens, preferably bench him for Week 16, which he deserves to be, quite frankly, for his lack of blocking and his lack of trying to tackle a Colts defender on the second interception. Horrible interception, and I get it. Mitch Trubisky missed him wide open, but George Pickens, no effort at all to try and make the tackle on the interception. It's not acceptable. It's not acceptable. And instead of publicly saying it's not acceptable and Pickens is not going to play, he's letting him play. He's enabling him. He's coddling him because he has talent and he thinks Pickens has to play in order for the Steelers to have a chance this week. And I think we'll see how the Steelers respond today. But I am expecting another bad performance from them. And I think they're going to have very low effort today because I don't think these players are playing for each other. And after Mike Tomlin's comments about George Pickens letting him play, I don't think they're playing for Mike Tomlin either. No. And that's a huge problem in terms of, him being the head coach. If he's lost the respect of his players, he can't be the coach of the Steelers anymore.
No, he can't. And it's a rough thing, but I agree with you. I think this is the first time that I think Mike Tomlin is losing the locker room. And he should have made a point with George Pickens. I don't care how important you think George Pickens is to your offense. That was clearly insubordinate, lazy, and you've got to sit him for things like what he pulled last week. And I watched that play. That was just disgusting. His lack of blocking, just completely waving on the blocking and kind of stepping back.
And then his response was even worse. I think that's really what he should be benched for, to be honest. Is he's asked about it in the media this week, and he says, "Well, I didn't want to get hurt, so I'm not blocking."
Yeah,
and that's just, if you don't want to get hurt, then don't play football. I mean,
don't play football.
You should be blocking. You should be tackling. I get it, you're wide receiver, and we don't want you to have to tackle on plays because that means we're making mistakes, we're turning the ball over. But on that play, the Steelers needed you to make a tackle for your team, and you ran the other way. Completely was avoiding trying to make the tackle. Just embarrassing, absolutely embarrassing, and should have been publicly humiliated, quite honestly, by Mike Tomlin calling him out and benching him. And I don't get that Mike Tomlin might lose his job because he kept Matt Canada too long and because he's defending George Pickens, which is just astonishing to me.
Yeah.
Really, really astonishing to me. And I wanted to bring up one other thing about Mike Tomlin, Tom, real quick before we get to your picks against the spread. This was a tweet from Steelers Takeaways on December 4th, and it's from an interview that they did with former Steelers linebacker Joe Schobert. And this is what Schobert had to say about this. His point was basically about the Steelers over-relying on veteran players, keeping young players on track. And this is the quote: "The coaching staff was there for such a long time, and they had so many veteran players on that team, way more than anywhere else I've been. It made for good continuity, but it was also less structure because of it. With all those veteran players were expected to be professionals on and off the field, and the coaches didn't take all of their time checking on them every day. They were expected to do everything the right way without all that governance by the coaches. It could get lax at times, but you were expected to do the work. It wasn't like the other places that were more structured, where they'd expect you to be in certain places like the weight room or the film room at certain times every day. You were expected to be professionals who could figure that out on your own." And that basically was exactly what Ryan Clark said, a former Steeler, was on the team in 2008. He said this of Mike Tomlin: "I'm going to allow you to be you." He's talking as if he's Mike Tomlin. "I'm going to allow you to be you. I'm going to give you that space, and giving you that space in return, you will return effort. In return, you'll return professionalism. And in return, you'll care about me and what we do with this team the same way I've cared about you." And that's not, and Ryan Clark made this point a little bit later on, that's not happening. This has been happening actually for more than just this year. He's given Antonio Brown freedom to be who he is. Juju Smith-Schuster, Chase Claypool. I mean, we can go down the line with just wide receivers, but other players as well. And I don't know if it's a generation thing or you just haven't brought in the right high character guys in the draft, but or you don't have those veterans that you had back in 2008, where it was the entire defense was veterans. And when Roethlisberger came into the league, you had Hines Ward and Alan Faneca and Jerome Bettis. Like, this team has no veterans like that on offense. So Mike Tomlin needs to change who he is. He needs to be more of a helicopter parent. He needs to be on these guys. And I think that, I'm not saying if you're a team like the Falcons or the Bears and maybe you're interested in Mike Tomlin if he's available this offseason, that you shouldn't hire him. But this is his style. And I think just you have to be wary of that you need to have veterans and other coaches on your staff, if Mike Tomlin's your head coach, that are going to hold guys accountable. Because Mike Tomlin's style is, I'm going to give freedom to everybody, and they expect them to be professionals like me.
Right. Yeah, and I agree, Dave. I think that's Mike Tomlin style, and it's always gone well for him because he's had the veteran presence. He's always had the guys around who, when you got the veterans who can kind of keep the younger players in line and kind of teach how to be a professional football player, how to be a professional at the NFL level.
Yeah.
It makes a big difference. And you're right. That's Tomlin's style. And I don't think it's working for him this year because he doesn't have the veteran presence that he needs to enforce this kind of discipline, this kind of leadership that this team needs. And
especially on offense. They have TJ Watt, Cameron Hayward on defense, but Deontay Johnson seems to be the leader on offense, and he's right behind Pickens in terms of effort on certain plays.
Yeah,
and that's I really can't say enough how big of a problem it is. I really think it's partially led to this collapse. I get it. The roster isn't that good. They've had poor quarterback play. They have a terrible offensive play calling. All those are problems. But when you also don't have this effort, and I think it's a big problem, and it's a reflection on Mike Tomlin for sure. And we got to move on, but he doesn't have his contract expires in 2024, Tom.
Right.
So you are left, if you're the Steelers, you're left with this really difficult decision of, do we fire him or do we extend him? Because you can't hire a good offensive coordinator with a head coach that's on a 1-year contract.
Nope.
You're not going to get a good coordinator doing that. So you either have to double down on Mike Tomlin, which right now, if you did that, fans are going to riot, or you move on. And I don't think that's an easy thing to do either. So I guess these next 3 games are going to be very telling for Steelers and Mike Tomlin.
I agree. It's a rough situation. And it's a rough situation that you really don't see with Tomlin because he's had this kind of he's had these leaders. He's had this kind of team of just about his entire regime. And he's been able to enforce it, his entire regime. And he doesn't seem to be able to enforce it himself. And that's been a problem. I think he would have gone a long way towards doing that by sitting Pickens this week. But letting Pickens basically get away with it all, basically a slap on the wrist, this is a terrible example to set for the Steelers.
I absolutely agree. And the way Pickens is playing, I don't think he gives them that great of a better chance to win even when he's playing.
Right.
And I think the negative of him playing, because other players are upset about him playing, it far outweighs anything that Pickens might give you on the field. As a Steeler fan, I hope I'm wrong. I hope Pickens goes for 150 today, but I don't see that happening. Not with Run Rudolph as lots of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer songs on Pittsburgh radio. There's Steelers reporter Amanda Godsey tweeted this. Run, Mason Rudolph. Out of all the quarterbacks, you're the mastermind. Run, Rudolph. Kenny ain't too far behind. Run, Rudolph. You got to throw a touchdown. Sully, make him hurry. Tell him he can bring Ashura down. Run, Rudolph. Next on the merry-go-round.
Oh man, yeah, it's going to be a rough finish for the Steelers.
Yeah,
because you've had 3 head coaches in 50 years. How long does that keep up? How long can you keep doing that?
Well, it's been going all right so far. You can keep doing it until it breaks or it's broken. But are you saying they're going to be on the head coaching carousel if they fire Mike Tomlin? They're going to bring in a new one every 3 years. It's going to change.
It's a very good possibility because that seems to be the way things happen these days. There is no patience in any NFL city for a head coach to start cutting. if they don't see improvement in their team. And that's the one thing Steelers fans have had for years is patience. Yeah, they may not have made the playoffs every year, but everybody's always had faith in the head coach, whether Noel, Cowher, or Tomlin. And is the next head coach, if Tomlin is gone this year, are they going to have that kind of patience with the next head coach? No, I
don't think so. I think
culture anymore.
That's a whole different conversation. I think that we don't have time for, unfortunately.
Right.
The spoiledness of Steeler fans, and unfortunately, I think what irks me about this whole situation is there have been really spoiled Steeler fans for the last 10 years that have wanted to fire Mike Tomlin, and they're really loud right now. Like, see, I was right. They should have fired him in 2014. And it's like, no, you weren't right.
You weren't right.
But you are right that because Tomlin's losing the locker room now, he could be fired. But no, he's had a really successful run and all those. There's a lot of stupid narratives around Mike Tomlin. But maybe we'll get around to that in a later episode. I want to get to your picks against the spread. Jay Black does have a comment, though. He wishes us a Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas.
Oh, Merry Christmas.
And he agreed with us about the veteran structure that you need to have. Yeah, really every team needs to have. But that's really been, again, Mike Tomlin's style in Pittsburgh, and maybe the only style that would have worked, especially when he arrived when he was 34 years old and had to earn the respect. Really, he had to earn their respect as much as the players had to earn his respect. His respect. So it was maybe Tomlin's only choice to start, and it worked, and it has worked for a long time. But I think he's got to adapt a little bit, and had a chance to do that this week and didn't. But going forward, definitely needs to be more buttoned down on some of the antics in the locker room and holding people accountable.
Yeah, he does, and it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out today. As they play, this afternoon. So, and they got the Bengals. So it's rough because the Bengals are playing great ball.
The thing I can't figure out, I mean, the last win the Steelers had was against the Bengals, and the Bengals haven't lost since then.
Right.
And it looked like those teams were going in opposite directions. It looked like the Steelers were going towards a playoff spot. And at that point, Burrow was out. It was their first game without Burrow. They didn't play the ball at all. And it
was Browning's first start.
Yeah, it looked like the Bengals were going to be the team that gives up. And it's been the opposite. It's
right. So out of my way.
So are the Steelers-Bengals one of the games you're picking against the spread?
I think the Bengals are going to cover that 2.5. They are on a good run. Everything's going well for them. Browning has done a very good job. I kind of had my doubts about him. At some point, you just got to say the guy's doing the job. And that's all you can do is, he is getting the results. And receivers seem to, work well for him. And you got to like that. I also think the Bills, they're giving 12.5 to the Chargers today. And the way Buffalo has been playing, Buffalo has been just crushing people lately, and good teams. And the Chargers have nothing on defense. I don't think they could stop Buffalo if they wanted to. There's just no way. I think Buffalo wins by the 12.5. Losing my voice. Hey, watch that. Clo was sitting in Zozo's spot. Zozo has her spot, yes. I think the Browns are given 2.5 against the Texans in Houston. I would take the Browns this week. Flacco, I'm telling you, the Bears should have won last week. The Bears really should have. They had Flacco on the ropes.
Yeah.
He came back and he threw 212 yards in the fourth quarter. you know,
That's crazy.
of course, when you pull your nose tackle out and move him into coverage on 3rd and 15 in the short zone coverage, allowing David Njoku to get, a big reception at that time. That's another reason why Bears fans are just pulling their hair out over Matt Eberflus. But I think the Browns, 2.5, the Texans got problems. Stroud is still out. And I think they have too many injuries to keep up. And Cleveland plays so great on defense. I'd also take the Packers -4.5 against the Panthers. Because I don't think the Panthers didn't impress me with anything last week. I know the Packers really disappointed me because I thought the Packers were set up to beat the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers had not won in Green Bay since 1990. And the Buccaneers, Baker Mayfield was the first quarterback to have a perfect passing afternoon in Green Bay. First opposing quarterback to have a perfect passing rating against Green Bay in Green Bay.
Ever.
Opposing quarterback, ever.
Wow. So you back on the Baker Mayfield train?
No, not back on Baker Mayfield. Although I think the Buccaneers do win this week against the Jacksonville Jaguars because apparently Lawrence not only has the ankle injury, but he's in concussion protocol. So, but I would take the Buccaneers at home with the -1.5. So you got a lot of options this week. Baker Mayfield just drives me nuts. I just don't know what to do about him.
I know. I was pulling your chain with that question just because, he's back and forth. I do have to say he's playing great football right now.
Yes, right now.
I'm not saying it's going to continue. I'm just saying right now he's playing really well. Really well. And if you want some fantasy advice, I bet Baker Mayfield's available in a lot of leagues. I'm not saying start him with your playoffs on the line, but you want to get him and put him on your bench and have extra bench points in case that's a tiebreaker, or if you get it, in case you have an injury this week and your championship's next week and you need an emergency quarterback, you got Baker Mayfield in case. Yeah. So that's what I would do.
One of the great things about this weekend's games that I think everybody's going to enjoy, the first and second top 2 teams in my power rankings are facing off on Monday night.
Right.
Ravens and 49ers. So that's going to be a hell of a game. You got the 3rd and 4th team in my power rankings facing off in a late afternoon game on Sunday with the Dallas Cowboys and Miami Dolphins. You got neither team can beat a winning team. They're both winning teams. Dallas has problems against on the road. So how is this going to play out?
Yeah. And I love the top teams from the opposite conferences playing each other because it really can it's going to throw a wrench in one of the conference's top seats because, I think more likely if San Francisco loses, there's a wrench there in the NFC because I don't really know if anybody's going to catch Baltimore, to be honest. But San Francisco, as great as they've been, they still haven't really locked down that top seed. You could catch them if you're Dallas or Philadelphia or even Detroit. It hasn't really been talked about as a home field possibility team, but they could win out and get home field if San Francisco stumbles.
Yeah, exactly. It's out there for anybody. So it's going to be fun to see how these games play out this weekend between, the top teams and I'm looking forward to those games. That Sunday afternoon, that Monday night game. It's going to be fun.
Yeah.
NFL has given us 3 games on Monday for Christmas. So,
not my favorite. Don't tend to love tuning into sports on Christmas Day, to be honest. And if I want to do a little bit of sports, it's 1 game, not 3. But the NFL is going to give us as much as their product as they can. So can't complain usually about that because I do like having the access to the games. But I won't be watching all 3. I'll tell you that on Christmas Day.
No, neither will I. But
Today's show was brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the app. When you do, use our promo code ASU. That gets you a 100% match on your first deposit up to $100. If you haven't started, you can use that promo code to get started. If you haven't started, what are you waiting for? Get started today with the games that are coming up a little bit later on NBC and Peacock. I've got a pick from one of those games, Tom. I brought up Mason Rudolph, the new starting quarterback for the Steelers. I've got him anytime interception. Definitely the over. And they have that, the new goblins and demons thing that we talked about last week. They have that with Mason Rudolph. You could go over 1.5 interceptions, or I guess you could go under if you want to say he's going to throw one pick. You could do that, but I wouldn't. I would go over the half interception, or if you're feeling ambitious, I think over 1.5 and predicting he's going to throw 2 is a good pick as well.
Well, the funny thing, last week, I tweeted out early in the game the way Joe Flacco has been playing. I said, Joe Flacco has a pick 6 in him at some point in this game. He actually threw one.
You're right.
I had that.
Yeah, that would have been a good prize pick.
Yeah, would have been. I got Rachaad White over 102.5 combined yards because he's been getting a lot of work rushing. Even if he doesn't get the rushing yards, he's been getting the passing yards. And I think the Buccaneers offense is going to play well. You're playing against Jacksonville. Jacksonville's been rough this year. So go ahead, take Rachaad White. I do like that. Jake Browning, 32 pass attempts. Because I think the Bengals have been relying more on Jake Browning and not as much on Joe Mixon, not as much on the running game. So I think Browning is going to get 32 pass attempts around the league. And you stole my last one.
Oh, the Rudolph one?
Rudolph is, yeah. With the interception, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I got 2 other ones. Josh Allen, 31.5 passing attempts. I'm actually going to go under, Tom. I know we don't normally like doing the unders, but he had just 15 attempts last week against Dallas in that blowout. This is another blowout, right? They're playing the Chargers. I don't think he's going to have to throw the ball 32 times. So I would go under there. And Danielle Hunter, you can get him at 0.75 sacks. I would go over. He's got, I think it's 15 and a half sacks. Double checking that. Yeah, 15 and a half sacks this season. So he's averaging more than a sack per game. He had 2 sacks last week against the Bengals. So I think he'll get 1 sack this week against the Lions, who at times haven't been the best in pass protection.
No, they haven't. That's a very good pick. I like that. Hunter, Hunter's been a monster this year. So I would definitely recommend that one. That's a good one.
Well, thanks for tuning in, everybody. We hope everyone has a wonderful holiday weekend and a Merry Christmas. Thank you for making us a part of your Saturday. We know Saturdays are very busy every week, but particularly holiday weekend. So thanks for being here with us.
Yep. We appreciate you spending your hour with us, today, and have a great week. Have a great holiday week, everyone.